Hey, Renter Retires. This is Adam Schroeder here with another episode, and I am joined today by Prof. Miss Mallory. She is a real estate, she's a teacher of real estate over at Penn State. And so I wanted to bring her on and just kind of talk about what's going on and how real estate investors can utilize real estate to improve their lives. So Mallory, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about kind of how you guys started in real estate. Like, what was the first thing that got you in, and why did you stick with it?
Yeah, so I decided that I wanted to go into business, and so I studied finance and marketing in my undergrad, and I graduated during the housing market crisis. And so I got to see firsthand exactly, what happens when you're in a downturn, what's happening in, real estate. And I decided to hedge my bets and stay in school versus go and find a job. And so I decided to get my law degree. And I also got an MBA. So I did an additional 4 years of grad school. Really felt like focusing on my education was the best path. And my mom at the time had a lot of rental properties that she had inherited from my grandparents. And so I watched her, do the property management thing, have tenants, and then kind of transition into selling some assets, and really thought that that was what I wanted to do too. I wanted to be able to have assets that were tangible instead of just constantly having, stocks or mutual funds. And so after I got my my degrees, I worked at a couple different jobs and found myself in a commercial real estate brokerage firm. And so that really got my appetite whet, especially when it came to income producing properties. And so I got my real estate license, and I was selling and leasing commercial space and doing property management. So I got a feel for kind of all of the different realms of real estate. And then I got offered a job here at Penn State, and I've been teaching real estate principles, real estate fundamentals, real estate law, real estate finance for the past 8 years. And I now have a portfolio of 5 properties myself, and I'm working on a syndication of a fraternity, and also have now kind of navigated into the business realm and working at creating businesses, buying businesses, and collaborating that with real estate.
So what are the things, you're teaching real estate there at Penn. Tell us a little bit.
Penn State.
Sorry.
We're different. We don't want to get that confused.
At Penn State. So you're teaching there.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that when the students come in and start taking your classes, you're just surprised they have absolutely no clue about?
Where do I begin? What I have found is there is no basic level of real estate financial literacy taught anywhere. So that's one of the biggest reasons too. Outside of my position at Penn State, I have created an online real estate education platform to help solve that problem. But one of the things that they come in is first off, I have them all do a lease review. And so they all have apartments, they all have housing contracts. And what I have found is almost 90% of them have not read the lease. So they don't know what they're being held to as far as their responsibilities as a tenant. And so once I give them this homework assignment that makes them actually go through and read it, all of these questions now come up as, oh, I didn't realize I had to do that. And how can they charge me this? And why? I didn't know that I had to get permission to do that. And it just amazes me that no matter what, people are just really easy to sign their name and not think about kind of some of the ramifications. So that's just maybe one example of the things that surprised me. But honestly, they come in, they don't know anything. It's really kind of like a blank slate. And sometimes that's concerning. Sometimes it's good because then they can be sponges and absorb it. But I feel like we need to do a better job at educating our overall society on what it is, what real estate can do, how can you utilize it, how can you make it part of your investment strategy.
Yeah, they probably just know their address and how much they're supposed to pay each month. That's about the extent of it, yeah.
Right. Well, they say, oh, mom and dad signed it, so I know they read it.
Yeah, doubtful.
Right,
doubtful.
Exactly.
So what are, I'm want to approach this more as the investor who's gotten started and is looking at doing the generational thing and teaching the next generation, their kids, about their investing? As you've gotten into your portfolio, you've built, you said the 5 doing the syndication now. What are some of the things that you learned from your mom? Maybe directly her saying, Mallory X, or maybe it was just through kind of the osmosis factor. But what are some of the things that she taught you that were the most helpful as you grow your portfolio?
One, being a landlord is not always fun, and it's usually not fun about 90% of the time. So, it's all about understanding how you can delegate things and how you can put proper systems and procedures in place. And so, if you're going to invest, you're going to need to understand evictions are going to happen. It's not if, it's usually when. So really understanding how that process should work, how much maintenance and repairs you're going to have to do along the way, is really important. And just keeping things organized and calculated based off of each particular property is also really important. So those would be the things I would say she kind of taught me indirectly or directly.
Yeah. So how have you as a landlord been able to put those into practice? Like, how are you mitigating, minimizing the number of evictions you're having to deal with? And how are you, making sure that the maintenance doesn't become something that's just too deferred? What processes have you put in place to handle that?
Yeah, I like to say that I create some level of a relationship with my tenants, and then that way they almost have a guilt factor if they are going to do something wrong, or, if something's happened, where they feel I'm easy to approach, I'm easy to talk to. I've also created relationships with partners, and so getting those issues addressed quickly is also important to maintaining that relationship. So contractors and, handy people, that's going to be a good way of doing that. Now, when it comes to like the financial part, I have gotten really good at spreadsheets, and I use a tool that allows me to manage all of my properties together, all in one source.
Okay. And so, sorry, as you're teaching these, now are these ones, when you're teaching your classes, are you mostly teaching them to be investors or just be something in the real estate space, or what's the primary purpose of them taking your class?
Yeah, so the ones that are taking my class, they all have a business background, or they're going to be graduating with a business degree. And so they all have some level of interest in real estate. Some of them maybe plan on working in, commercial real estate as portfolio managers, asset managers, mortgage brokers, anything like that. Or others are just like, I want to learn how to invest and what do I need to do in order to start building wealth through real estate. Because again, this is a class that is not offered in most colleges. It's not offered in high schools. And so it's, something that typically you're going to have a reason, like your mom and dad are investing, or you see your aunt or uncle make a lot of money in real estate. You watch a lot of HGTV. You want to figure out how you can make money. That's generally how the students end up in my class.
Fair enough. Whenever you put it that way, I mean, you see a lot of people making money in real estate, and it is very enticing. But a lot of people need to realize that's not every single person. So
it's not every single person, and those people who are talking about it aren't telling you all of the horror stories that they had to get through to get to that point. So,
yeah, that is incredibly true. That is incredibly true. So, what are some of the the myths that surround real estate? I mean, it might just be, every deal makes money. How do you kind of get through the, some of the, myths that's around there that keeps people from seeing the full real estate investing? Like, what are some of the things that you really hammer home into your students to get their mindset right there when they actually go out and start getting into real estate investing? They're not just caught off guard and want to quit immediately or end up, over their heads.
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword where I tell them they need to do enough research and understand, what kind of market is it that you're getting into? What kind of asset class? What is your rental strategy? Are you looking for short-term? Are you looking for mid-term, long-term? And really understanding the particular property that you're looking at, how much risk is associated with that. Now, I get people that love that piece of it. They'll continue researching and then never take any action. And so, you have that analysis paralysis, if you will. But what I tell them is, conduct enough research that you feel that this is a good investment. And your first one, just be prepared to lose. Like, just be prepared for that to be your learning curve. And you use that, you get in, you find a relatively inexpensive property, you test it out, you get a feel for how the closing process went. How hard was it to find a tenant? What kind of steps do you need to get into? Then once you have that first one under your belt, the next one and the ones after that become a little bit more easy. So it's all about just kind of getting yourself started, but doing enough research that you feel like it's going to at least be acceptable.
Does real estate investing seem impossible and out of reach? Like many, you may feel discouraged due to the lack of experience, money, and time. Fortunately, Connect Invest was built with investors like you in mind. Here's how simple it is to get started. 1. Create your account at connectinvest.com/RTR. 2. Fund your digital wallet with at least $500. 3. Select from 6, 12, and 24-month short notes with annualized return rates up to 9%. The analysis paralysis is a difficult thing to get over with, not investors, but kind of aspiring investors. So are there general things you say, hit these, go look at these places and it'll get you enough information? And if so, can you share some of those places, or what do you like to look at or direct your students towards to get them to the point where they feel comfortable?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of different real estate tools out there now as far as technology is concerned. I know my students generally default by using Zillow, but we will also use CoStar, which has a lot of commercial back data, and LoopNet also has commercial back data. But if you're looking for house rentals, I'm trying to think of the one that I'm currently using. It'll come to me. But anyways, there's so many different offerings out there that you can find, some realm of what are the current rents in this market? What are people buying? What is this property valued at? So I think that as long as you are doing some level of research where you feel confident in, I can get this property for X, it's going to rent for Y. Here are my costs or my expenses every month. If I'm financing debt, there's that cost too. So how much cash flow am I left in my pocket? And, I always tell people to be more conservative than aggressive, and always assume your expenses are going to be 5% more than what you think they are, because it's always the case. And then are you still making money? As long as you're not having to dump in money every single month, go forward with it. That's basically what I tell them.
Yeah. So have you ventured outside of your home market, or are you still staying investing where you live?
Currently I have a couple of properties in the greater Pittsburgh market, and then I have three of it's half and half. I'm originally from the Pittsburgh area, so I have a couple properties there, and then I have a couple properties here within my market in central PA. I am also looking to get into maybe some of the beach areas along Maryland and Ocean City or Myrtle Beach. But outside of that, I haven't delved into outside of state investments quite yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So what are the things, you mentioned kind of establishing a relationship, which most of our investors, they're using property managers because they don't want to, I don't want my tenants to ever have my phone number. It's easy pass for me on that. So what are some of the things as people, what are some tips that you would give people for either managing their own or even potentially tracking their property manager? Is it really just be available, or, what are some of the things that you can do? I know you say you kind of like to create the relationship so they feel a little guilty about it, but what are some of the things you can do as you're placing the tenant and just as you move forward with your relationship? Because eventually you might be their friend, but you're going to be the one going to them in a year saying, hey, I want you to pay me $50 more a month. And, sometimes friends don't like asking friends for more money, and sometimes friends feel like they can say no. So how do you bridge that divide?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting predicament that you get yourself in. And what I would tell people, especially those that are starting to get into the real estate game, if you have the time and the bandwidth to manage your first property, that's a really good learning opportunity. You're going to really understand the property. You're going to understand, what's going on. However, it is not for everyone. It is not for the faint of heart. I will tell you that any future property I get, 1,000% hiring a property manager. Like, I know that for a fact. Now, I took on these properties specifically, also knowing that I had students who wanted to get some experience. And so I have opportunities for them to work on these properties as managers or other things like that. So my case is a little bit different, but 1,000% property managers, the right property managers, are well worth what you pay, in fees for their services. Because I've had a couple of friends in property management, and some of their horror stories that they deal with that they don't even tell the owners, because they're like, it's not even worth telling them. Nope, don't, nope. Mm-hmm. You got smells coming from the upstairs unit, and then you go and you find out what those smells are. Nope, I don't care to know. I don't need to know. You take care of it. You let me know when the problem's done.
Yeah. So as you're teaching, the future generation, what are the conversations like about, growing the portfolio? Because it's one thing to get one property, right? Mm-hmm. But then getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 properties, or, whatever number they're aspiring to. What are some of the things y'all talk about in terms of actually scaling your portfolio to make it give you what you want?
So we talk about a couple of things. We talk about leverage. And obviously, if you're able to use your first property as leverage to acquire your second property, then that's a great stepping stone where you can borrow against the property, refinance, cash out. The other option is OPM, right? Other people's money. So find people who are looking to invest, who maybe don't have the time to do the research. If you have time to do the research, you find the property and then just give them an equity stake. And then you're still being able to scale, but you're being able to scale at a higher volume because you have additional cash injection that you can then, expand. Now, the thing that I tell my friends when they're saying I want to get into real estate, I just don't know how. I say, if it were me and I could do it all over again, I would start with multifamily, 1,000%. I would find a property where it's producing multiple forms of cash flow, and I only have to replace one roof versus a roof on every individual single family. Now, that doesn't always make the most sense, or it's not always available in a current market, but understanding exactly what you're getting yourself into definitely helps before you can really expand and grow forward.
Yeah. Now, you started the online educational platform as well, obviously, because not everybody can, take your classes, mm-hmm. and you wanted to, have digital courses out there for people. What once you are an investor and once you've learned kind of how to do your due diligence on a property, what else in your opinion, what do you tell people, what else should they be continuing to learn?
Yeah. So one of the things that I focus, and that's my passion, is taxes and liability reduction. And so as an attorney, I love educating people on how to legally not pay taxes based on, how their portfolio is created, is designed, how they create business structures and business entities. And, doing things in the right way are going to alleviate a lot of that tax burden. And especially if you have a spouse or you yourself are a high W-2 employee and you're looking for some balance to offset some of that income, real estate and the investing strategies are really going to help lower your liability that you have. And so I think you're constantly looking at, how can I better this portfolio? How can I learn what's going to make the most sense? If I wanted to sell and I wanted to do a 1031 exchange, how does that process look? What is that going to look like? Who do I need to get in touch with if I need to find a qualified intermediary? I think there's always something we can learn, and I like to consider myself a lifelong learner, and I'm constantly learning, and I love sharing what I'm learning. But I would say, even if you've invested in one thing, it doesn't mean you know everything. You should always be figuring out what strategies and what techniques have worked for others. What could you do differently? Maybe you're under renting. Maybe you could get into the midterm rental market instead of long-term, and you can, add 25% to your profit margins. All these different things are things to consider and assess as you're continuing to build that portfolio.
Okay. So, I'm on the website right now. We'll put a link up to it there. If someone's getting started, maybe they have 0 or 1 and they're in here. What class would you say you've got to take this one because it teaches you X and that's going to be the most beneficial for you moving forward?
Yeah, so we have just a basic, intro to real estate. And so I would say that's probably the best for, first timers. But as you start to get into it, the tax liability is a good one. Understanding landlord tenant law is another good one. So those are going to be based on where you're at and based on where you're looking to go. Those would be kind of where I would point people.
All right. Well, fantastic. So as we, start coming to a close here, I want to throw up the website for people. If you want to check more, it's inspirewealthmgt.com. Tell people what they're going to see whenever they get to that website.
Yeah, so here you're going to see a bunch of different resources. We also have a podcast where we bring on different guests and we talk to them about different aspects of real estate investing. So you'll see access to that. You'll see, you can sign up for our newsletter where we send you weekly tips on real estate and different things that we're seeing in the markets and recommendations. And then you'll also see access to the course material, which is Inspire Wealth Education. So that'll take you directly to our online education platform.
All right. And the last question I want to throw out there is one that there are a lot of people out there right now who did have the analysis paralysis, might still have it. But back in 2020, they were going to invest, but then they got scared because the prices went up. And then the prices stabilized, but the interest rates went up. And so they haven't bought because interest rates are too high. So now they're waiting for the rates to come down. When the rates come down, the prices are probably going to go back up. And so they're not going to do anything. So what do you have to say to those people? And where do you see the market being, let's just say 1 year from today?
Yeah, I would say to those people, you're always going to find opportunities no matter what's happening in the market. There's always going to be distressed properties. There's always going to be an opportunity. You just have to seize it and you have to figure out what's going to work for you. Where I see the market in the next year, I do envision that the Fed will start lowering rates probably at their next meeting. Debatable as to whether or not it's going to be a 25% basis point or 50 basis point. But I think that by next year, we should see rates hovering from around like 4.5% to 5.5%. If we're lucky, probably more in the 5.25%. And I think that's, in a lot of people's minds, it's really high. But historically speaking, it's still very low if we, aggregate all of the data, even especially back in the 80s when, we saw rates that were in the 20s. And, so we just have to understand that we're not going to be in the same environment that we were pre-COVID and COVID where, debt was next to nothing. And that you just build that into your pro forma and you just account for the fact that that's one of the expenses. And obviously, as the rates are increasing, rents are increasing too. So you just kind of have to find the nice balance there.
Yeah, I always tell people there's always a reason not to invest in real estate, and there's always a reason to invest in real estate. It just depends which one you're looking for and what you're most comfortable doing. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Mallory.
Thank you.
Again, everybody, the website is inspirewealthmgt.com. That's inspirewealthmgt.com. If you have any questions, whether it's for myself or Zach or Mallory, send them over to podcast@renttoretirement.com and we will get them answered for you, whether it's in an email response or on a future episode. That's podcast@renttoretirement.com. And don't forget, you can check out our properties at renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. Really appreciate the time you spent educating yourselves today. We'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.